There is a truth about men that is rarely spoken aloud. A truth so subtle and so deep that it often slips between the cracks of our conversations about attraction, love, and relationships. It's this: a man's deepest desire is not triggered by a perfect body or a calculated strategy. It is not born from an image, a role, or a formula. Men who have lived, who have loved, who have lost, who have been humbled and reshaped by life, do not surrender to an illusion. They surrender to a presence. And not just any presence. The kind of presence that, without saying a word, makes him feel he is standing in front of a woman who doesn't need to be chosen, because she has already chosen herself. This is not a conversation about manipulation. There are no empty techniques here. I'm not here to tell you how to act, what to wear, or which text messages will make him miss you. Because what truly awakens desire in a mature man cannot be done. It cannot be performed like a scene in a play. It is embodied. It is emanated. It is vibrated from a place so deep inside you that no mask, no script, no trick can touch it. We are speaking here about emotionally available men who have stepped beyond the shallow games of conquest. Men who crave connection that shakes them to their core. Men for whom the body is only a threshold, an opening, but not the destination. For these men, it is the soul, the magnetism, and the authenticity of a woman that act as the true gateway. Carl Jung, in his work Man and His Symbols, wrote, "The female soul contains in its unconscious the image of the man, and the male soul contains the image of the woman." What does this mean? It means that deep down, desire is ignited not by what the other person is, but by how that person reflects something we already carry within us, something we long to integrate, something hidden in our own depths. And so, today, I want to talk to you about how that kind of emotional, deep, lasting desire is awakened. Not the fleeting surface kind that comes and goes with circumstance. The kind that is born when a man feels that, with you, he does not have to defend himself, explain himself, or prove anything. He just has to be. For that to happen, there is a silent key, a way of speaking to him, not in manipulation, but in truth, that strikes straight into the core of his identity. I call it mental nicknames, the power of mental nicknames. A mental nickname is not a magic phrase. It is not an exaggerated compliment. It is a specific way of naming, authentically, elegantly, what a man values most in himself, but rarely hears acknowledged. Because the truth is, the world does not often say to a man, "I admire your calm," or "I feel your quiet strength." The world is quick to critique, to demand, to expect. But when a woman says these words from a place of grounded presence, something inside him ignites. And this ignition does not happen in his body first. It happens in his identity. It is the difference between a spark that flashes and dies, and a flame that builds, sustains, and bonds. This is not about making him feel useful. It is about making him feel essential. Over the course of this conversation, I'm going to show you 4 specific mental nicknames that have the power to awaken this level of connection in a man. 1. Natural protector. 2. Untamable. 3. Man of steel and calm. 4. Calm and mystery. And for each one, I will walk you through real-life moments, scenes, words, gestures, tones, rhythms that bring these nicknames to life. I will also reveal the mistakes that unintentionally extinguish this fire, so you can avoid them. Because it's not just about what is said. It's about how you inhabit the moment, how you hold your energy, your gaze, your pauses, and the space between your words. A disclaimer before we begin. If you're wondering whether this works with all men, the answer is simple. No, it does not. Not all men are available for this level of intimacy. Some run from themselves. Some are trapped in cycles of avoidance, ego, and shallow distraction. This is not for them. This is for the men who dare to meet themselves through you. And you, if you are here listening, are probably a woman who already senses something profound. You do not need to beg for love. You do not need to fight for a place in his life. You only need to embody your own magnetism with calm, clarity, and truth. Because the most irresistible thing for a man is not a woman who seduces him out of urgency. It is a woman who sees him, and still doesn't need him to validate herself. Why desire cannot be manufactured. Authentic desire cannot be manufactured. It does not respond to formulas. It does not awaken with rehearsed scripts. True desire, the kind that arises in an emotionally available man, cannot be controlled. It can only be provoked. And this provocation is not aggressive. It is not manipulative. It is subtle, elegant. A dance between conscious energies that recognize each other beyond the obvious. Here's something worth writing on your skin. A mature man does not fall for a woman who tries to trap him. He stays for a woman who makes him feel free, yet seen. The more you become a present, serene woman connected to your own worth, the more you invite him to show himself, not from his ego, but from his essence. Carl Jung, in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, wrote, "The shadow is everything the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves." What does this have to do with desire? Everything. Because a man begins to desire deeply when he senses that you will not box him in, that you will not correct, mold, or diminish him, that instead, you will calmly hold space for the parts of him he has not yet even discovered. That is the secret. Not demanding he open up, but creating the space where he wants to. Not forcing emotion, but allowing it to emerge. Because when he senses he can be himself, without judgment, without pressure, he begins to feel desired not for what he gives, but for who he is. And that changes everything. The trap of mistaken vulnerability. Too often, without meaning to, we confuse vulnerability with neediness. We try to make him feel important, but from a place of lack. The classic line, "I need you to protect me," becomes an emotional demand. But change that to, "I recognize that you know how to protect," and the impact shifts entirely. In the first, you're asking. In the second, you're honoring. In the first, he feels the weight of expectation. In the second, he feels the freedom of being seen. A clear example. It's not the same to say, with a trembling voice, "Thank you for helping me. I wouldn't know what to do without you," as it is to look him in the eyes with a subtle smile and say, "It was admirable how you handled everything without losing control. There's something in your energy that calms, even when everything's burning." In the first, there is dependence. In the second, there is feminine power recognizing masculine power. And that doesn't just ignite desire, it honors it. Every mature man carries within him a silent impulse, the impulse to protect. It's not about being a hero, not about rescuing anyone, and it certainly isn't about dominance. It's older than words. It's written in his bones, in his nervous system, in the quiet way his body positions itself between you and potential harm without him even realizing. When a man feels that his strength has impact, when his presence creates safety, when he senses that the space around you feels more ordered when he's near, he connects with an essential part of his masculine identity. The tragedy is, not all women see this, and even fewer know how to awaken this part of him, without making him feel obligated or manipulated. But when you do, when you manage to activate it through elegance, through recognition, through trust, it lights something up in him that is both primal and tender. Carl Jung, in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, spoke about how a woman can be the channel that awakens a man's transcendent function, the part of him that bridges who he is now with the best of who he could be. When you activate his natural protector instinct, you're not triggering him from a place of neediness. You're inviting him into his nobility. You're saying without saying, your strength is not a threat here. It is a valued gift. Why this matters. Many men have been taught, by life, by failed relationships, by the culture, that their power is dangerous, that their protective impulse is unwanted, that their role is simply to not hurt, not impose, not get in the way. And so they withdraw. They hide this part of themselves. But when you honor it, when you make it clear that his grounded strength is welcome, you're telling him something rare. Here, your power can be beautiful. The street scene. Picture this. A couple is walking down a dimly lit street at night. It's not dangerous, but the energy shifts. A strange sound. Someone approaching a little too quickly. She doesn't panic. She doesn't clutch at him in fear. Instead, she steps a little closer, not clinging, just aligning her body with his. glances at him briefly and says quietly, "I feel like nothing can happen to me when I'm with you." She doesn't need him to do anything heroic. There's no drama, but his body changes instantly. He straightens. His attention sharpens. Without a word, his protective instinct awakens. Not out of duty, but because it has been recognized. Everyday life moments. You don't need dark alleys and strangers to awaken this. It happens in the smallest, most ordinary moments. You ask him to come with you to a place you feel uneasy about, not because you can't handle it, but because you want him there. When you arrive, you say, "Just having you nearby changes everything." Or after a moment when he stepped in for you, maybe in a tense conversation with others, you look at him with quiet admiration and say, "I liked how you set boundaries, firm but elegant." These words are not flattery. They're recognition. And recognition is fuel to a man's identity. Signs it's working. When you awaken his natural protector, you'll notice changes, not necessarily in his words, but in his behavior. He becomes more attentive to your subtle signals. He offers his jacket before you say you're cold. He starts anticipating your needs without you asking. His touches become more intentional, firmer, reassuring. You might notice it in his breathing when you're close, or in the way he scans a room without making it obvious, or in the way he looks at you when you're unaware. Men don't always respond with speeches. They respond with presence, the common mistake. Too many women, trying to activate this, end up overplaying fragility. They exaggerate their helplessness, dramatize their clumsiness, or act overly dependent. This doesn't connect him, it burdens him. It doesn't make him want to protect. It makes him feel responsible for holding you up entirely. The power lies in this phrase, "I can do it, but with you I rest." That is the energy of choice, not dependence. A scene of rest. You've had a long, hard day. Instead of unloading in a torrent or expecting him to fix everything, you simply move closer. Put your hand on his chest and say, "Today was a lot, but when you hug me, everything falls into place." No demand, no emotional ransom, just recognition. You're telling him, "You're not my solution, you're my place to let go." That's deeply feminine energy. It's magnetic because it's not asking from emptiness. It's trusting from fullness. Why this works on identity. When you activate his natural protector from a place of trust, you're not telling him what to do. You're telling him who he is, and that who he is valued. In today's world, where men are often either expected to perform endlessly or discouraged from stepping forward at all, this is a rare gift. Just as you feel seen when a man notices your light without you having to prove it, he feels deeply recognized when you look at him as if to say, "I see what you can hold, and I honor it." The neck touch scene. Imagine this. You're both at home. He's fixing something, a loose shelf, a light bulb, maybe making coffee. You watch him for a few seconds longer than usual. Then you walk over slowly, lightly touch the back of his neck, and say in a low voice, "I love how you care about the little things. You're one of those who show up, not just promise." Then you walk away. He doesn't need to respond. The moment has already anchored itself in him, because he didn't just hear admiration. He felt it in your presence. The Jungian layer. Jung also spoke about the thema, the inner feminine image within a man, projected outward. When a woman embodies qualities like softness without submission, recognition without need, and trust without self-erasure, she touches that inner image. She becomes a mirror. Not one that demands, but one that inspires. And so when you awaken the natural protector in a man, you're not asking him to save you. You're creating space for him to express himself fully. Not to fill your void, but to feel that his presence has meaning. Not to be responsible for you, but to be inspired by you. When this happens, his attraction to you stops being about convenience or appearance. It becomes rooted in identity. Because you're no longer just a lover. You're the person who reflects back to him the kind of man he wants to be. Some men don't seek peace first. They seek fire, but not just any fire, their own fire. The one they've fought for. The one they've learned to stop fearing. The one they've carried like a torch through storms. Heartbreaks, betrayals, and rebirths. These are men who love with intensity. who think deeply, create passionately, and live with a force that can be hard to contain. And because of that, because they know the cost of dimming themselves, they will only connect with a woman who does not try to extinguish that fire. A woman who can stand close enough to feel the heat, without trying to control the flame. What the untamable needs. He doesn't want a woman who bows to him. He doesn't want someone who worships him blindly. He's had the easy seductions, the compliant lovers, the conquests that meant nothing. He's seen through the shallow games. Now he's looking for something far rarer, a woman who respects his freedom, not as a polite gesture, but as a way of life. A woman with her own fire, one that doesn't compete with his, but dances alongside it. Carl Jung would have called this an archetype in the process of individuation, when a man is no longer trying to conform to a mold, but is shaping himself according to his inner truth. Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "I'm not interested in a good person. I am interested in a whole person." This is exactly the kind of woman the untamable man is drawn to. Not perfection, not obedience, but wholeness. How to awaken the untamable. You cannot do it by clipping his wings. You cannot do it by asking him to be smaller, quieter, safer. You awaken him by standing fully in your own freedom, so that when he looks at you, he sees not a cage, but another open sky. Scene 1, the wild idea. He's telling you about a new project. It's wild, risky, unconventional. Most people would tell him to be careful, to slow down, to think twice. But you don't. You listen with your eyes locked on his. When he finishes, you say, "There's something in you that never gives up, and that turns me on." You didn't ground him. You didn't clip him. You admired the exact thing most people try to restrain. And in that moment, something in him leans toward you, because you didn't fear his fire. Scene 2, the disagreement. There's tension between you. The conversation is sharp, voices low but firm. You don't back down. You don't fold just to keep the peace, but you also don't try to win by wounding. When the pause comes, you meet his gaze and say, "I know I'm not easy, but neither are you, and that's why this makes sense." It's disarming, because you're not positioning yourself as beneath him or above him. You're inviting him into a dance where both fires can burn without consuming each other. Why this works. The untamable man is used to being resisted, warned, or reduced. You stand out because you don't try to stop him. You try to understand him. Your admiration isn't passive. It's charged. It's laced with challenge. You don't want him because he's easy. You want him because he's not. The energy you must hold. You cannot inspire an untamable man if you live in fear. You must have your own passions, your own dreams, your own convictions, not to compete with his, but to stand beside them. You must be able to say, in your presence, even without words, "I want to see you in your fullest expression," not the safest version of yourself. And you must be able to do this without trying to control how, when, or where that expression happens. Scene 3, the freedom statement. You sense he's been distant for a few days, not in disinterest, but because he's in his own process. Instead of chasing or asking with anxiety, you look him in the eye when you see him again and say, "Go where you need to go. Just know, I'll be here when you want to come back." It's simple, it's spacious, and for a man whose soul values freedom above almost anything, it's irresistible, because you've just shown him that loving you does not mean betraying himself. Common mistakes. The temptation with the untamable man is to try to hold him tighter, to make him choose you more explicitly, to seek constant proof. But the moment he feels caged, he will begin to pull away, not because he doesn't care, but because his inner compass won't let him stay where freedom is threatened. The secret? Stay centered. Let him return to you because with you he feels more alive, not more confined. The archetype in him. Jung's work on the animus, the inner masculine, helps us understand why this archetype is so magnetic. When you embody both passion and self-possession, you become the mirror that reflects his inner hero, not the domesticated version of himself the world demands, but the raw, authentic man he's fought to become. And when he feels this reflected through your gaze, your words, your energy, desire is no longer just physical. It becomes existential. Scene 4, the rage moment. You're sitting across from him. He's speaking with force about an injustice, about something that infuriates him. His voice is strong, his gestures sharp. Many would tell him to calm down, to lower his voice. You don't. You watch him. You let him finish. Then you say quietly, "It moves me how you never stay silent. There's something wild in you I never want to see extinguished." He says nothing, but his shoulders drop. His breath deepens. It's not lust that flashes first, it's respect. And that respect becomes the seed of desire that will keep growing long after the moment ends. Why it feels like alchemy. When you can hold space for a man's fire without trying to put it out, you give him something rare, an emotional refuge that doesn't require him to shrink. The untamable doesn't want a passive muse. He wants a partner who meets him in the full voltage of life. And so, when you say without words, "I see your fire, I'm not afraid of it, and I will not try to own it," you awaken the part of him that longs to be fully known. Some men don't need to prove their power. They carry it in silence. They're not the loudest in the room. They don't boast. They don't posture. Instead, they have a gravity, an invisible center of mass that draws everything around them into a more steady rhythm. People breathe slower when they're near him. Tension dissolves. The room organizes itself. This is the man of steel and calm. His strength is not about force, it's about presence, the nature of his power. He's the kind of man who can take a storm in the chest and not flinch. The one who doesn't rush when everything is urgent. The one whose voice can lower chaos like water on fire. This doesn't mean he's emotionless. It means his emotions have been tempered, like steel and flame, until they can bear enormous weight without cracking. And here's what's important. He doesn't give this steadiness to everyone. He reserves it for those who earn his trust. Carl Jung described this kind of man as embodying the mature, Senex archetype, the wise old man, not in age, but in essence. It's not about being old. It's about having walked through enough fire that the flames no longer dictate his moves. The Senex offers stability without control, guidance without demand. In relationships, this archetype can be irresistible because he makes you feel both held and free. How to awaken him? Unlike the natural protector, who responds to recognition of his readiness to act, the man of steel and calm responds to the trust of your vulnerability. Not chaotic vulnerability, where you spill every fear and expect rescue, but the kind of vulnerability that says, "I trust you to hold me without fixing me." Scene 1, the storm outside. It's late, rain against the windows. You've had a day that left your chest tight and your mind buzzing. You curl up next to him, not speaking at first. Eventually you say quietly, "I don't need you to say anything. Just let me lean on you for a while." He doesn't rush to reassure you. He doesn't flood the silence with solutions. He just stays. And in that stillness, something shifts in you, because his calm becomes your calm. Scene 2, the crisis. Something unexpected happens. Bad news, plans collapse. Everyone else reacts. Panicked voices, scattered movements. He doesn't. He stands still, eyes sharp, breathing even. When you look at him, he meets your gaze and says simply, "We'll figure it out." And somehow, that's enough. Not because he's promised control over the outcome, but because you believe he won't break no matter what happens. Why this matters to him. A man like this isn't fed by drama or endless excitement. What draws him in is the feeling that his steadiness has a place to land. When you acknowledge his calm, not as boring, but as profoundly magnetic, you invite him to open up more of himself. Because here's the truth. Even steel bends when it's never appreciated. How to signal you see him. In moments of chaos, you instinctively orient toward him, not out of dependency, but in recognition of his anchor. You tell him after a difficult situation, "When you're there, I don't feel lost." You notice the details, how he listens without interrupting, how he doesn't rush the moment, how his presence fills a space without noise. These acknowledgments are like oxygen to him, not because he needs validation, but because they confirm that his deepest offering is felt. The temptation to avoid. Some women try to test this kind of man, pushing him to react just to see if he cares. But this backfires. For the man of steel and calm, unnecessary provocation isn't exciting. It's a signal that his energy will be drained rather than valued. Instead of testing, you build depth with him through coherence, showing that you can meet him in the same quiet power when it's needed. Scene 3, the aftermath. A disagreement has just ended. You're both quiet. The air feels heavy. Instead of storming off or filling the space with noise, you sit beside him. After a moment you say, "I know we see it differently, but I trust you, even in the tension." His eyes soften because you didn't confuse calm with absence. You understood that sometimes holding space is the most powerful move of all. The Jungian layer. In Jung's terms, the man of steel and calm often integrates both the animus, active masculine, and the self, the organizing principle of the psyche. This makes him deeply grounding for others, but it can also make him misunderstood. Some mistake his stillness for lack of passion, when in reality, his passion runs deep. It's just directed with precision. When you see the heat beneath the steel, and you reflect it back without trying to force it, you give him permission to bring more of it forward. Scene 4, the quiet touch. You're both reading the room still. You put your hand on his forearm. Not an urgency, just connection. You say softly, "There's something about you. Like no matter what happens, I know where home is." You don't linger for his reply. You go back to your book. But for the rest of the night, his mind will replay that line, because you named what his presence does. And you did it without fanfare. Why he chooses to stay. With a man like this, loyalty doesn't come from thrill or novelty. It comes from mutual grounding, where both people feel more themselves in each other's presence. If you can meet his calm without needing to stir it up, if you can trust his steel without needing to bend it, you become the rare woman who makes his strength feel fully seen. And when that happens, his steadiness becomes not just yours, it becomes yours together. Some men don't seduce you by making life easier. They seduce you by making you sharper. They're not here to soothe your every discomfort. They're here to hold up a mirror you can't ignore. This is the challenger, the man whose love is not soft in the conventional sense, but is profoundly committed to your growth. What makes him different? He won't agree just to keep the peace. He won't nod along to opinions he doesn't believe in. If you're wrong, he'll tell you. If you're holding yourself back, he'll push you. If you're playing small, he'll call you out. And he won't do it to dominate you. He'll do it because he sees the version of you that you might be too afraid to claim. Carl Jung might call this man an expression of the warrior. Archetype, but not in its immature form that seeks conflict for its own sake. This is the mature warrior, disciplined, intentional, and loyal to truth over comfort. In love, this can be magnetic, because while the challenger might frustrate you, he also makes you feel awake. How to awaken him? You can't awaken the challenger by flattering him or trying to keep things smooth. You awaken him by meeting him in the arena, engaging with his mind, standing in your truth, and being willing to wrestle with ideas without making it personal. Scene 1, the debate. You're talking over dinner. The topic turns to something charged. Politics, philosophy, values. He makes a point you disagree with. Instead of softening your response to avoid friction, you smile slightly and say, "I see it differently. Want to hear why?" You lay out your reasoning, not as an attack, but as an offering. When you finish, he doesn't dismiss you. He leans back, eyes sharp, and says, "That's interesting. I'll give you that one." You didn't just keep up. You kept him engaged. Scene 2, the challenge returned. He's been pushing you lately, about your goals, your self-discipline, the standards you've set. One day, you turn it around. You're telling me to level up. So let me ask, are you really going all in right now? There's a pause, a flicker in his eyes. Then, half smile. You've just given him what few dare to give, a reflection of his own edge. Why this works. The challenger respects strength, not just physical, but intellectual and emotional. When you show him that you can withstand the heat without collapsing or retaliating, you earn something far more valuable than approval. You earn his respect. And for him, respect is the gateway to deeper desire. The energy you must hold. With the challenger, your greatest power is in your centered conviction. If you're easily rattled, he'll either lose interest or feel like he has to hold back. If you're overly combative, he'll see you as reactive instead of formidable. What captivates him is the balance. You can take a hit without folding. You can give one without needing to wound. Scene 3. The encouragement that stings. You're talking about a project you've been procrastinating on. He listens, then says plainly, "You're better than this delay. You know it." It stings because it's true. Instead of pouting, you look him in the eye and say, "You're right. And I hate that you're right, but I needed to hear it." That's the moment his gaze changes, because you've shown him that his challenge didn't push you away. It pulled you closer. Why he chooses you. The challenger isn't looking for someone who just accepts him as he is. He's looking for someone who tests him back. Not to tear him down, but to keep him sharp. If you can meet his provocations with wit, presence, and self-awareness, he'll see you as an equal sparring partner in both love and life. The Jungian layer. Jung's work reminds us that every archetype has a shadow. For the challenger, the shadow is cruelty, criticism without care. But in his integrated form, the challenger's critiques are acts of devotion. When you can feel the love beneath the push, you'll stop taking his challenges as attacks and start feeling them as invitations to rise. Scene 4. The victory shared. After weeks of pushing yourself, you hit a milestone. You tell him. He grins. Not a soft grin, but the kind that says, "I knew you could. See? I told you." You were underestimating yourself. You laugh. And I hated you for saying it at the time. Good. That means it worked. In that exchange is the essence of this archetype. Love that sharpens. And sharpness that loves. Common mistakes. Taking it personally when he challenges you, assuming it's a sign of disapproval rather than investment. Trying to avoid friction entirely. Thinking it will keep the connection stable, when in fact it will bore him. Mistaking challenge for control. Remember, he's not trying to dominate you. He's trying to see if you can stand your ground. When you understand the challenger, you see that his provocations are not walls, they're doors. And when you walk through them without flinching, you earn a place in his inner circle that very few ever reach. If you've felt yourself in this video, if you've recognized the men you've met, or the man you're seeking, then you already know this isn't surface-level advice. It's an initiation into how connection really works. Don't just listen and disappear. Step closer. Subscribe now, and you'll get the next chapters. The ones that go deeper, sharper, and more unapologetically real, delivered straight to you. Because the most magnetic connections aren't found. They're created. One insight, one shift, one electric moment at a time.